The photograph trembled in my hands, its edges worn and yellowed from years of being hidden. 25 years of marriage captured in a single moment, Mark's arm around my waist, his smile perfect and practiced, while my eyes held a truth I hadn't been ready to see. But it wasn't the image that made my stomach turn. It was the message scrawled on the back in unfamiliar handwriting. He'll do to her what he did to me. I'm Ruth, and until this morning, I thought I knew every secret my husband kept. The box I'd found while clearing out Dad's garage contained more than just old memories. It held the first crack in the foundation of my carefully constructed life. Mom? Lucas's voice echoed from downstairs. Grandpa's asking for you. Coming, I called back, slipping the photograph into my pocket. The weight of it felt like a stone against my thigh as I descended the stairs. Dad sat in his favorite armchair, oxygen tube beneath his nose, fingers drumming against the armrest. Ruth, honey, did you find those old contracts I mentioned? Not yet. I forced a smile, but I found something else interesting. Everything all right? Lucas studied my face with that perceptive gaze he'd inherited from me. You look like you've seen a ghost. Just dusty up there. The lie came easily, too easily. Dad, do you remember who took our wedding photos? Dad's brow furrowed. Professional fellow. Mark's mother arranged it all. Why? No reason. Another lie. I'd never been good at confrontation, always choosing peace over truth. But the photograph burned in my pocket like a live coal. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Working late again, don't wait up. Third time this week. I typed back okay while my mind raced through the past months. The late nights, the password changes on his phone, the hushed conversations that ended when I entered rooms. Ruth? Dad's voice pulled me back. The contracts? I'll keep looking tomorrow. I squeezed his shoulder. Lucas? Help Grandpa with his evening meds? Sure, Mom. Lucas gave me another searching look. You really okay? Fine, sweetie. Just need some air. Outside, the evening air carried the scent of jasmine from Evelyn's carefully tended garden next door. My mother-in-law's pride and joy, those flowers. Like her son, they looked perfect on the surface. I pulled out the photograph again. The handwriting was feminine, delicate but angry. The pen had pressed so hard it left indentations on the paper. Who was she? What had Mark done? My phone buzzed again. This time it was Samantha. Drinks tomorrow? Need to talk. I hesitated before responding. Sam had been trying to tell me something for weeks, but I'd been too busy caring for Dad, too wrapped up in my own denial. Yes, I typed. Please. The sound of a car door slammed nearby. Through the gathering dusk, I watched Mark's colleague Catherine step out of her BMW, parked 2 blocks down. She smoothed her skirt, checked her lipstick in the reflection of her car window. A minute later, Mark's Audi pulled up beside her. I stood frozen, watching them embrace with the familiarity of longtime lovers, not colleagues working late. The photograph crumpled in my clenched fist as 25 years of trust shattered in an instant. My phone buzzed one final time. Evelyn. Coming over for Sunday dinner? Mark says you've been distant lately? Of course he had. And of course she'd call to check on me, to maintain the facade of family harmony she'd orchestrated for so long. I watched Mark and Catherine drive away together, their taillights bleeding red into the darkness. The woman who wrote that message, whoever she was, had tried to warn me. Now, standing in my own driveway while my husband drove off with another woman, I finally understood what I had to do. Time to start digging. Not just through Dad's garage, but through every carefully constructed lie that had built this house of cards I called a marriage. Someone else had walked this path before me, leaving breadcrumbs I'd been too blind to see. Well, I was seeing now, and Mark? He had no idea what was coming. The coffee shop buzzed with morning chatter, but Samantha's silence spoke volumes. She stared at the bank statements spread between our lattes, her lawyer's mind already connecting dots I'd been too blind to see. $200,000, Ruth. That's how much he's moved from your joint accounts in the last year. The number hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. We would have noticed small amounts. Different accounts, always under 10,000 to avoid triggering alerts. She tapped one transaction. Look at the pattern. Every Friday, like clockwork. My hand shook as I reached for my cup. Friday nights, when Mark was supposedly working late, when he was meeting Catherine. There's more. Samantha slid another paper across the table. These transfers to an offshore account? They started 3 months after your father's company went public. What does Dad's company have to do with this? Think, Ruth. Who handled the legal work for that IPO? Mark did. The realization settled like ice in my stomach. He had access to everything. And now your father's sick, unable to manage his affairs. Samantha let the implication hang. My phone lit up with a text from Mark. Dinner tonight? Just us. Need to talk. He knows something's wrong, I said. This morning, he actually asked about Dad's medication schedule. He never does that. Samantha's expression hardened. You need to be careful. Men like Mark, when they feel cornered. Ruth Adams! Evelyn's voice cut through the cafe's buzz. My mother-in-law stood at our table, perfectly coiffed as always. I thought that was your car outside. Shouldn't you be with your father? Lucas is with him. I gathered the papers quickly, but not before Evelyn's sharp eyes caught glimpses of bank logos. Financial troubles, dear? Her concern dripped with satisfaction. Mark mentioned you've been distracted lately. If you need help managing things. We're fine, Evelyn. Just reviewing some investments. Of course. She patted my shoulder. Though you really should let Mark handle those things. He's always been so good with money. Remember how he saved for Lucas's college fund? My laugh came out harder than intended. Yes, he's very good with money, especially other people's. Evelyn's smile flickered. What exactly does that mean? Nothing, just thinking out loud. Well, do try to make it to Sunday dinner this week. Mark says you've been missing quite a few lately. After she left, Samantha leaned forward. She knows something. She always knows something. The question is, how much? We need to move fast. Get your name off those joint accounts before... My phone buzzed again. Lucas. Mom, come home. Something's wrong with Grandpa. The drive home was a blur. I found Lucas in Dad's room, holding his hand while he struggled to breathe. He was fine, Lucas said, voice shaking. Then suddenly he just... Mom, his new medication. What new medication? The one Dad started this morning. Mark brought it over. Said Dr. Chen prescribed it. Ice spread through my veins. Mark brought it? Yeah, said he picked it up on his way to work. What's wrong? I grabbed the pill bottle, checking the label. Everything looked legitimate, but something felt off. Dr. Chen's signature seemed different. My phone buzzed. Mark again. How's your father? Heard he's not feeling well. Coming home early. Of course he was. He wanted to be here, to watch, to maintain his concerned son-in-law facade. But now I saw through it, saw the calculated moves behind every gesture. Lucas, call an ambulance, now. Mom, what's happening? I couldn't tell him, not yet, not until I was sure. But as I held Dad's hand, watching his chest rise and fall with each labored breath, I knew. The photograph's warning wasn't just about Mark's infidelity. It was about something much darker. The sound of Mark's key in the front door made my skin crawl. His footsteps on the stairs, steady and unhurried, like a man who had all the time in the world. Ruth? His voice carried that perfect note of concern. Is everything okay? I squeezed Dad's hand and stood to face my husband, 25 years of trust crumbling into dust. In the distance, sirens wailed. Game on, Mark, game on. The hospital corridor stretched endless and white, each step echoing like accusations against the linoleum. Dad was stable now, but the toxicology report in my hand told a different story than the one Mark had spun for the emergency room staff. Mrs. Adams? Dr. Chen appeared, her face tight with concern. Could we speak privately? I followed her into a consultation room, aware of Mark's eyes tracking our movement from his strategic position by the nurse's station. He hadn't left the hospital once, playing the devoted son-in-law to perfection. That prescription, Dr. Chen said once the door closed. I never wrote it. I know. Someone used my DEA number. The police will want. Not yet. My voice came out stronger than I felt. I need time to protect my father first. A knock interrupted us. Evelyn entered without waiting for a response, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. Ruth, darling, you look exhausted. Why don't you let Mark take you home? I'll stay with James. No. The word shot out before I could soften it. Evelyn's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose. Really, dear, you're being unreasonable. Mark's worried sick about you. Is he? I turned to face her fully. Or is he worried about what Dad might say when he wakes up? Something flickered behind Evelyn's carefully maintained facade. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. The offshore accounts, Mother, the missing money. Did you know about those too? Whatever financial arrangements Mark and James made are hardly my concern. She adjusted her pearl necklace, a nervous tell I'd noticed over years of Sunday dinners. Though I did warn you, didn't I, about marrying beneath your station? I almost laughed. Beneath my station? Mark's the one who saved your father's company. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Who handled everything when James started making questionable decisions? Really, Ruth, your father's illness might be clouding your judgment. My phone buzzed. Samantha. Found something. Bank records from 2001. Call me. 2001. The year before I married Mark. The year his first wife disappeared. Ruth? Lucas appeared in the doorway, his face pale. Grandpa's asking for you. And Mom? He's saying some weird stuff about Mark and Rachel. Rachel, Mark's first wife, the woman who'd written that message on the photograph. Evelyn moved faster than I'd ever seen her, grabbing Lucas's arm. Your grandfather's confused, dear. The medication. The medication you knew about? I stepped between them. The prescription Mark forged? Don't be ridiculous. But her hand trembled on her pearls. Mark would never... Mom? Lucas pulled away from his grandmother, eyes wide. What's going on? Before I could answer, Mark appeared behind him. Everything okay in here? James is getting agitated. Is he? I met my husband's gaze. What's he saying about Rachel, Mark? The change was subtle, a tightening around his eyes, a slight shift in his stance. 25 years of marriage had taught me his tells. Who? Your first wife. The one who left that message on our wedding photo. Lucas's head snapped toward his father. You were married before? Ancient history. Mark's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your mother's under a lot of stress. Don't. My voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare try to gaslight me. Not anymore. Evelyn stepped forward, all pretense of concern gone. Mark, perhaps we should... A commotion erupted in the hallway. Dad's voice, stronger than it had been in weeks, carried through the open door. Get me the police. I remember now. I remember what he did to Rachel. Mark moved with surprising speed, but I was faster. I slammed the consultation room door, trapping him inside with us. Lucas backed away from his father, understanding dawning in his eyes. Mom? Call security, I told him, not taking my eyes off Mark. Now. Ruth? Mark's voice turned soft, reasonable. Think about what you're doing. Think about our family. I am. I pulled out my phone, dialed Samantha. That's all I've been thinking about. Behind Mark, Evelyn's carefully constructed world crumbled in real time. She sank into a chair, pearls clutched in a white-knuckled grip as the sound of running feet approached down the corridor. The game was ending, but not the way Mark had planned. Not the way any of us had expected. And somewhere, I hoped Rachel was watching. The police interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Morris slid another photograph across the table, Rachel's driver's license photo from 2001. She looked happy, unaware of what was coming. Mrs. Adams, we found these in your mother-in-law's attic. More photos spread across the metal surface. Rachel and Mark on their wedding day. Rachel at company parties. Rachel's empty car, abandoned at the train station. Care to explain why Evelyn kept these? I didn't even know they existed until yesterday. My voice sounded hollow in the sterile room. Just like I didn't know about the life insurance policy Mark collected. $500,000. Morris tapped his notebook. Paid out after Rachel was declared legally dead. Your husband never mentioned this? A knock interrupted us. Samantha entered, all business in her charcoal suit. This interview is over. My client needs rest. We're not finished. Yes, you are. Ruth's father was just poisoned. She's a victim here, not a suspect. Outside, Lucas waited with 2 cups of coffee. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He hadn't slept since Mark's arrest. Dad's lawyer called again. He wants to make a deal. Of course he does. I accepted the coffee but couldn't drink it. What did he say? If you drop the financial fraud charges, Dad will sign over his share of Grandpa's company. Lucas's voice cracked. He really did steal from Grandpa, didn't he? Before I could answer, a familiar figure appeared at the end of the hallway. David Mitchell, my high school sweetheart, now the district attorney. Seeing him sent me back 25 years, to the night I chose Mark over him. Ruth, he approached cautiously. We found something in Mark's office. You should see this. The evidence room was cramped, filled with boxes labeled Adams Financial. David pulled out a leather-bound diary. This was Rachel's. He opened it carefully. The last entry. It's about you. My hands trembled as I read. He's found someone new. Ruth Turner. Sweet girl. Doesn't see what he really is. I tried warning her father, but James wouldn't listen. Mark's already working his way into the company. I can't watch another woman fall into his trap. I have to stop him. There's more. David hesitated. We found traces of the same poison that was used on your father in Rachel's autopsy reports. The case was reopened this morning. The room spun. She didn't leave him. No. David's voice softened. She didn't. My phone buzzed. Evelyn, we need to talk, alone. I'll tell you everything about Rachel. Don't. Samantha grabbed my arm. It's a trap. It's evidence. I showed David the message. We need her confession. We'll wire you. He touched my shoulder, an echo of old comfort. But Ruth, be careful. If Evelyn's involved in Rachel's death, she is. The certainty hit me like a physical blow. She had to be. Mark never made a move without her approval. Lucas appeared in the doorway, face ashen. Mom, Grandpa's awake. He's asking for you. And he remembers everything about the night Rachel disappeared. The diary felt heavy in my hands. One woman's warnings from beyond the grave, trying to prevent history from repeating itself. But I had survived what Rachel couldn't. I had proof, allies, and most importantly, nothing left to lose. Tell Evelyn I'll meet her. I handed David the diary. But first, I need to hear what my father has to say. Ruth. David's voice stopped me. Whatever happened to Rachel, it wasn't your fault. No. I looked at the evidence boxes, each one a piece of Mark's elaborate deception. But what happens next is my choice. Lucas fell into step beside me as we headed to the hospital. Mom, what are we going to do? We're going to finish what Rachel started. I pulled out my phone, typed a response to Evelyn. Tonight, your house, just us. The reply came instantly. Perfect, dear. I'll make tea. I could almost hear her smug satisfaction. She thought she was in control, just like Mark had. They never expected the quiet, accommodating Ruth to become their downfall. But Rachel had seen it coming. She'd tried to warn me through that photograph, and now, finally, I was ready to listen. Evelyn's living room hadn't changed in 25 years. Same floral wallpaper, same crystal decanters, same poison lurking beneath perfect manners. The tea service gleamed between us, untouched. Rachel was unstable. Evelyn's voice dripped honey and arsenic. Surely you've realized that by now. Was she? I placed Rachel's diary on the coffee table. Or did she just see through Mark sooner than I did? Evelyn's fingers twitched toward her pearls. Where did you get that? Same place the police found the evidence about the poison. I watched her face carefully. The one you kept in your garden shed. The one that killed Rachel. The one you gave Mark to use on my father. Ridiculous. But her voice wavered. I loved Rachel like a daughter. Like you love me? The laugh that escaped me felt foreign. Tell me, did you help Mark dispose of her body before or after you helped him forge the life insurance documents? The doorbell rang. Evelyn startled, tea sloshing onto her immaculate tablecloth. Expecting someone? Just the ghosts you've been hiding, Mother. Catherine burst in, mascara streaked down her face. Ruth, thank God. Mark's gone crazy. He's threatening to... She stopped short at the sight of Evelyn. Oh, Catherine. I stood slowly. Tell them what you told me this morning. I can't. She clutched her purse like a shield. He'll kill me. Like he killed Rachel? Evelyn's teacup clattered against its saucer. Don't be absurd. Rachel left. Everyone knows that. No. Catherine's voice strengthened. I found the letters, the real ones, not the fake ones you planted at the train station. Rachel was going to expose everything. The embezzlement, the fraud, the affairs. She wrote it all down and sent copies to her lawyer. I pulled out my phone, showed them the email from David. The sealed documents were opened this morning. Everything, Evelyn. Every dirty secret you and Mark buried with her. Evelyn lunged for her purse, but I was faster. The revolver inside was exactly where Catherine said it would be. Mother's little insurance policy. I placed it beside Rachel's diary. How many other daughters-in-law have you threatened with this? You don't understand. Evelyn's facade cracked. Mark needed me. Rachel was going to ruin everything, just like you're trying to do. My phone buzzed. Lucas. Dad's out on bail. He's looking for you. Another text flashed. David. Stay where you are. Police en route. He's coming here, isn't he? Catherine backed toward the door. I never should have helped him with the company accounts. I thought he loved me. He doesn't love anyone. The words tasted like freedom. Do you, Mark? He stood in the doorway, suit pristine despite his jail stay. Ruth, darling, having tea without me? Just catching up with your mother and your girlfriend. We were discussing Rachel. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. Ancient history. Not anymore. I nodded toward the diary. Your first wife left quite a paper trail. Mother, Mark's voice hardened. Handle this. Evelyn reached for the revolver, but Catherine knocked it away. It skidded under an antique cabinet as sirens wailed in the distance. It's over, Mark. I stood my ground as he advanced. Rachel warned me about you. I was just too blind to see it. Rachel was weak. He spat the words. Just like you. No, I met his gaze steadily. She was strong enough to fight back, and so am I. The front door burst open, David leading a team of officers, Samantha right behind them with a stack of documents. Mark Adams, David's voice rang with satisfaction. You're under arrest for the murder of Rachel Adams. As they led him away, Evelyn crumpled into her chair, pearls snapped and scattering across the floor like broken promises. Ruth? Catherine touched my arm. I'm sorry for everything. I know. I picked up Rachel's diary, finally understanding the weight of its warning. We all are. Outside, Lucas waited in the gathering dusk. Mom, is it really over? I watched Mark in the back of the police car, Evelyn being led to another. 25 years of lies unraveling in a single evening. No, I said softly. Now we start making things right. The courthouse bathroom mirror reflected 25 years of carefully maintained composure crumbling at the edges. I splashed water on my face, trying to wash away Mark's words from the preliminary hearing. Mrs. Adams, he'd said, voice dripping false concern, seems to be suffering from paranoid delusions, just like Rachel was before her. Unfortunate departure. The door creaked open. Catherine slipped in, looking as haunted as I felt. They're calling me to testify next. And? Mark's lawyer contacted me. She twisted her hands together. If I testify about the accounts, they'll say I was the one who orchestrated everything. They have documents with my signature. Of course they did. Mark never left loose ends, except Rachel, and now me. Ruth? Samantha's voice carried through the door. They're ready. The courtroom felt colder than before. Mark sat beside his lawyer, perfectly composed in his tailored suit. Evelyn, out on bail, occupied the front row like a queen holding court. The jury watched impassively as I took the stand. "Mrs. Adams," Mark's lawyer began, "isn't it true that your father's mental state has been deteriorating?" "Objection," Samantha called. "Relevance?" "Goes to the witness's state of mind, Your Honor, and the reliability of James Turner's accusations." "Overruled. Proceed." "My father is unwell," I admitted, "but he knows what he saw." Like he knew about the non-existent merger in 2019, the one that cost investors millions. The blow landed hard. Dad's mistake had nearly bankrupted the company, the mistake Mark had used to gain control. Or perhaps, the lawyer continued, like Rachel knew about these supposed crimes before her mental breakdown and subsequent disappearance. "Rachel didn't disappear." My voice shook. "You killed her." "Objection," Mark's lawyer smiled. "Your Honor, move to strike." "Sustained." A movement caught my eye. Lucas slipping out of the courtroom, shoulders hunched. My son couldn't bear to watch his father destroy another woman's credibility. "Mrs. Adams," the lawyer pressed, "how long have you been taking anxiety medication?" The question blindsided me. What?" He held up a prescription bottle. "Found in your bathroom cabinet. Prescribed 3 days after Rachel Adams's diary mysteriously appeared. Interesting timing." "That's not—" "But I remembered Mark in our house last week, claiming to collect his things." "You planted those." "Your Honor," he turned to the judge, "I move to dismiss all charges. We have a disturbed woman, influenced by her mentally unstable father, making accusations based on a convenient diary that appeared just when she needed it." "Objection," Samantha stood. "The diary's authenticity has been verified." "By the same lab that employs Mrs. Adams's former boyfriend? District Attorney Mitchell's involvement hardly seems impartial." The judge called a recess. In the hallway, David caught my arm. "Ruth, there's something else. The garden shed where you said the poison was kept? Burned down last night, all evidence destroyed." "How?" "Evelyn had visitors in jail yesterday. Former gardener, apparently." My knees buckled. Everything we'd built, every piece of evidence, crumbling like Rachel's forgotten grave. "Mom." Lucas appeared, eyes red. "Grandmother wants to talk, says she'll tell the truth about everything." "It's a trap," Samantha warned. "Of course it is." I straightened my spine. "But it's the only play we have left." "Ruth." David touched my shoulder. "If you do this, if you meet with her alone—" "I know." I watched Mark through the conference room window, laughing with his lawyer. "But Rachel died alone, thinking no one would ever know the truth. I won't let that happen again." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Storage Unit 23, Central Lock. Combination 2547-01. Come alone. R." The numbers hit me like a physical blow. My wedding date to Mark. "Ruth?" Samantha noticed my expression. "What is it?" I showed her the text. Rachel's birthday was January 25th. Mark was 47 when she died. And look at the unit number 23, the day they found her car. "It's too convenient," David warned. "Or it's exactly what we need." I straightened my jacket, feeling Rachel's diary press against my heart through my pocket. "Sometimes the dead leave breadcrumbs. We just have to be brave enough to follow them." Behind me, Mark's laughter echoed through the courthouse halls. He thought he'd won again. He was wrong. Storage Unit 23 loomed before me in the gathering dusk. The padlock's numbers glowed faintly, 2547-01. Rachel's final message, waiting 20 years to be heard. "You shouldn't be here." Mark's voice carried across the empty lot. Of course he'd followed me. Of course he'd known. "Neither should you." I kept my hand steady on the lock. "Aren't you violating your bail conditions?" "Funny thing about evidence." He stepped closer, all pretense of charm stripped away. "It has a way of disappearing, like Rachel's diary, like those bank records." "Like Rachel?" His laugh scraped against my nerves. "Poor, unstable Rachel, just like poor, unstable Ruth. History does have a way of repeating itself." The lock clicked open. Don't. His voice hardened. Whatever you think is in there. I yanked the door up. The storage unit's contents caught the last rays of sunlight. Boxes of financial records, a laptop, and mounted on the back wall, a wedding dress preserved in plastic. Rachel's dress, dark stains visible even through the covering. She knew. I stepped inside. She kept everything. And now you know too. Metal scraped against metal as Mark pulled the door down behind us. Just like Rachel. The darkness felt absolute until a small light flickered on. Evelyn stood in the corner, pearl necklace gleaming. I told you she'd come, Mark, just like I told you about Rachel. Mother. The word carried decades of twisted devotion. You always know best. Did you really think I wouldn't protect my son? Evelyn's voice dripped false concern. Rachel didn't understand. But you, Ruth, you were supposed to be different. I am different. I pulled out my phone, pressed send on the pre-recorded message. I learned from Rachel's mistakes. Sirens wailed in the distance. Mark lunged forward, but another voice cut through the darkness. Don't touch her. Lucas stepped from behind a stack of boxes, phone recording everything. It's over, Dad. Son, Mark's voice cracked. You don't understand. I understand everything. Lucas's hand trembled, but his voice stayed steady. I found Rachel's real diary last week, in Grandmother's attic, the one you didn't know about. Evelyn's breath caught. That's impossible. I burned the copy. I met her eyes. You burned the copy Rachel wanted you to find. She was smarter than you thought. The storage unit door rattled open. David stood silhouetted against police lights, gun drawn. Mark Adams, Evelyn Adams, you're under arrest. No evidence. Mark's smile turned feral. Nothing that'll stick. Except my testimony. Catherine stepped into view. The offshore accounts, the forged documents, everything. And this time, I'm telling the truth. You betrayed me? Mark's composure finally cracked. After everything I promised you? Like you promised Rachel? I pulled out the photograph that started everything. She wrote this warning the night you killed her, right here in this storage unit, but she had already hidden the real evidence. You can't prove that. Evelyn's fingers clutched her pearls. It's our word against the video Rachel left. Lucas held up a USB drive, hidden in her wedding dress, the one she was wearing when she confronted you both, the one with her blood on it. Mark lunged for the drive, but David was faster. As handcuffs clicked into place, I watched 25 years of lies crumble in my husband's eyes. You know what your mistake was? I stepped closer, voice low. You thought I was weak, like you thought Rachel was weak, but she protected me from beyond the grave, and I protected our son. Ruth, Mark started, but I cut him off. Goodbye, Mark. Say hello to Rachel in your dreams. Outside, Lucas hugged me tight. Mom, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. When I found the diary, you did exactly right. I held my son, feeling the weight of 2 decades of secrets finally lift. Rachel would be proud. The police led Mark and Evelyn away, their perfect facade shattered under the flashing lights. Catherine stood with the detectives, finally telling the whole truth. David touched my shoulder, a gesture of support 2 decades in the making. Ready to go home? He asked. I looked at the storage unit one last time, imagining Rachel here on her last night, ensuring the truth would eventually come to light. Yes, I said. It's time. The cemetery grass sparkled with morning dew as I placed fresh flowers on Rachel's newly marked grave. After 20 years in an unmarked plot, she finally had a proper headstone, her real story etched in granite. The jury's still deliberating. Samantha approached quietly, legal briefcase in hand. But with Catherine's testimony and Rachel's video, it doesn't matter anymore. I touched the cold stone. She's already won. You both have. Dad sat in his wheelchair nearby, stronger now that the poison had left his system. Lucas knelt beside him, showing him something on his phone, probably more pictures from his graduate school acceptance letters. The company board voted this morning. Samantha handed me an envelope. They're returning full control to your father with you as acting CEO until he's fully recovered. Rachel's last gift. I smiled at the irony. She saved everything Mark tried to steal, just waiting for someone to find it. Ruth, David's voice carried across the morning air. There's something you need to see. He held a letter, the paper aged and delicate. Found this in the evidence from the storage unit. It's addressed to you. My hands trembled as I unfolded Rachel's last words. Dear Ruth, if you're reading this, you've already discovered what Mark and Evelyn are capable of. I couldn't save myself, but I could leave breadcrumbs for the next woman strong enough to follow them. The truth isn't in the evidence I've gathered. It's in the choice you'll make when you find it. Choose wisdom over vengeance. Choose life over bitterness. Most importantly, choose yourself. Mom! Lucas joined us, his father's charm replaced by something gentler, more genuine. Grandmother's lawyer called. She wants to make a deal. No deals. I folded the letter carefully. The truth comes out, all of it. Even the part about the offshore accounts? Catherine approached hesitantly, clutching a familiar manila envelope. There's something I never told you. The money Mark stole? Most of it came back anonymously last month. All of it. The implications hit me hard. Evelyn? Her final manipulation. Samantha shook her head. Trying to buy mercy. Or redemption. I watched Dad chatting with his nurses, alive despite everything Mark had tried. Sometimes karma works in unexpected ways. A police car pulled up to the cemetery gates. Detective Morris stepped out, face grim but satisfied. Jury's back, verdict's in. Already? David checked his watch. That was fast. They only needed to see Rachel's video once. The detective's eyes softened. You coming? I looked at Rachel's headstone one last time. The morning sun caught the engraving. The truth sets us free. Actually, I handed him Rachel's letter. I think I'll stay here a while. This is where the real verdict was decided 20 years ago. Mom? Lucas touched my shoulder. You sure? Rachel chose truth over survival. I sat on the cool grass, feeling decades of tension finally release. She chose to protect a stranger instead of saving herself. The jury can't give us anything more meaningful than that. Dad wheeled closer, his hand finding mine. She'd be proud of you, Ruth, of all of us. Even me? Catherine asked softly. Especially you. I squeezed her hand. You chose truth too, in the end. The others headed to the courthouse, leaving me alone with Rachel's memory. In my pocket, the old photograph felt lighter now. Its warning transformed from a curse into a blessing. A fresh breeze stirred the flowers, carrying the scent of new beginnings. Somewhere in a courtroom, Mark and Evelyn would face justice. But here, in this quiet moment, I'd found something more valuable than revenge. I'd found the truth Rachel died protecting. The truth that had saved not just my life, but my soul. Thank you, I whispered to the morning air, and for a moment, I could have sworn the breeze whispered back. Some debts can never be repaid. Some wounds never fully heal. But as I stood to join the others, I understood what Rachel had known all along. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well, free from the shadows of those who tried to destroy us. The truth had finally set us both free.